Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Ron Carter here in New York. It's like the second day of spring, but you never know it looking outside. But spring is in my house. Spring is up there. Spring is here, actually. That song is called Loose Change. I wrote that several years ago, dedicated to April 15th, Income Tax Day. And what all is left is loose change. I'm ready for the questions in a moment. One of the things that crossed my mind today to talk about some of the songs I wrote and what gave those titles some kind of importance. And Loose Change is what we're hearing in the background now, written for April 15th. One of the songs I play most often with my quartet is a song called Mr. Bowtie, dedicated to my father, who always wore a bow tie and looked great. So my memory for him is Mr. Bowtie. Nice record. Another song I wrote was Railroad Crossing, and that's dedicated to the memory of Red Garland and Philly Joe Jones. I couldn't imagine a better way to introduce to a great piano player and great drummer at the same time as having the opportunity to play with Red Garland and Philadelphia Joe Jones. Lovely people with me, understanding musicians, and really played great. Hence the Miles Davis quintet of the early 50s, Miles Davis' first great quintet. Okay, let's have some questions, and I'll try to get to them as quickly as I can. And hello, Mr. Carter, how are you? When am I coming to Holland? Well, I haven't gotten my itinerary yet for the summer, and I'm just coming back from a word I learned last week, actually. I heard other people say it, but I never quite knew what it meant. So I looked in the dictionary and found out what it was. It was the V-A, let me check it out now. V-A-C-A-T-I-O-N, vacation. And I tried that out. It was a great word to use. So I'm back from my vacation, and I'm waiting for my agent to give me a schedule of when I can pay for that V-A-C-A-T-I-O-N. Hello, Bill Kamak. How are you? What was it like working with milestones in the 70s and 80s, Mr. Miller? Interestingly enough, most of their dates took place in Berkeley at their studio out in Berkeley, California. Wonderful engineer Jim Stern, my friend who is still living out in the West Coast. One of the things I enjoyed working with Milestone was they trusted my sense of organizing a record. That meant calling the people, booking the studio, having the library fixed up, having the time for each tune worked out. The only guess of it was, can the guys and me play the kind of music I expect us to be able to play. And those records are pretty proof that we kind of nailed it. Thanks, Nigel. I'll talk to you again soon. Hello, Mary. Who are some of my favorite drummers that I've played with over my career? That's an easy one, actually, because I play with a lot of them, and they're all my favorites. They all offer something different. And if I say this drummer is my favorite, that means that the others are less my favorite, and I wouldn't dare do that to my friends. They always can play louder than me. I maintain a good relationship with all those guys. Every one of them I learned a lesson from, and I appreciate them accepting my attempts to help them play better as they helped me. All my friends. Nigel Miller again. Oh, this is another Nigel Miller question. Do I have any interesting stories with you and Art Farmer? Well, Mr. Farmer is probably the one that's most responsible for me joining Miles Davis. If you ever bought my bio on page 87 or so, has a story about Art Farmer, and I'll tell it to you quickly so that people won't wait for me to finish the story. I was working with Art Farmer at a place called the Half Note, with Jim Hall on guitar and Walter Perkins on drums. We had a 2-week engagement. When Miles came by on the first night of the gig, and on intermission, he walked over to me and said that he was putting together a band, that Jimmy Cobb was the only remaining member, and he's going to do a tour, a 6-week tour of California and West Coast, and wanted to know if I was available. So I explained to him, Mr. Davis, because I never called him Miles until a year in the band. Mr. Davis, I got a job right now with Art Farmer, and I'm having a great time playing with Art and learning new tunes, and I'm loving learning how to play with Jim Hall. If you will ask Art Farmer to release me from my responsibility to his gig, and he says yes, I'm more than happy to go. He says no, I'm just as happy to play with Mr. Farmer, and hopefully you'll wait until I'm available. So he walked over to Mr. Farmer, and they had a quiet conversation, and he walked back over and said that Art Farmer said it was okay if he released the band. So I quickly walked over to Mr. Art Farmer and shook his hand and thanked him for allowing me to join this band, and he thanked me for having such a high regard for him and being such a responsible person. My Miles Davis Art Story Farmer for the Week. Danielle, have you watched I Called Him Morgan? No, I haven't. I do have a copy of that. I just haven't been home long enough to sit to watch. I hear great things about it, and I hear it's a really wonderful, wonderful movie. I just haven't taken the time to see it, and that's on my list of things to do. I did several dates with Lee Morgan, and I enjoyed playing with him. I enjoyed watching him play because he was such a focused, such a concentrated player. It's hard to not appreciate his efforts to make every note important. Let's see.
Before, regarding your favorite arrangement or composition you've done?
Can you say that again?
We had a question before from Jody regarding favorite arrangement or composition you've done.
Boy, that's a hard question because I've been involved in so many different projects and worked with so many different arrangers who were Arvo Nelson, Don Sebesky, Klaus Orgelman, myself, Bob James. It's hard to say which one was better. They all offered me a different level of need, a different level of trying to make their music sound. Bob Freeman. They trusted my judgment to help their arrangements do something else. And for that responsibility, I thank them all. Richie DeRosa, they're all really great friends of mine, and I thank them for trusting me to make the music have another turn. Tim Green, Mr. Baltimore. Have you learned Baltimore Oriole yet? My friend from Monk Institute. Lester Harper, how are you? Okay. When the band stops playing and leaves the bass player, what do you recommend? Well, I hate to have them do that. And I try to make sure that when that happens, or before that happens, to alert the band that at some point I may play by myself. And if that happens, I'm not mad at you guys, and you're not fired. I want you to stay there and watch what I try to do, to be a part of the environment I'm trying to create as one person playing to an audience. And I want you to be as part of this process. I want your presence there so they understand that you are as involved in this solo bass playing as you are. And I found that not only does that make them stay on tune for the set, but it makes them stay sharp. It makes them aware of the possibilities that they haven't quite heard yet. For me, to know that they are there and that I have their undivided attention, it draws me to another level. I appreciate their presence. I need their presence. I need their energy. I need their enthusiasm, just like they need mine when I'm playing behind them. Okay? That's kind of question. Gary, do you have any favorite tenor players? Well, again, those questions of such a general nature are difficult for me because to answer any one of those favorite questions means that those that are in the margins of my answer are not important. And that's not true at all. They are all important. They are all necessary. I've always treated going to work with whoever the band leader is and whoever the instrumentalists are as a free school for me. And my job is, can I understand this classwork that I'm being presented, can I apply this classwork not only to this gig, but to tomorrow night's set? But I love playing with Hank Mosley and George Coleman and Wayne Shorter and Dexter Gordon, Houston Person. They're just all over the place. I love them all. And I look forward to playing with Branford again. Guys who, I like playing with Charles Lloyd. I mean, we could stand here all day just giving names of guys I've played with, and I've enjoyed playing with them and learning from them each and every night. Okay, Francis, you've managed to find the original pressing of piccolo. Wow. And that record is 1975. The first recording made at the club in New York called Sweet Basil. That's no longer there. The first recording of my quartet with Ben Riley on drums, my dear friend Buster Williams on bass, and Kenny Barron on piano. I love that record, and it's really a wonderful introduction to how two bass players can sound good in the same band. My favorite practice routine right now is practicing 1 hour a day and taking an etude or an exercise out of one of my books on my music stand and not leaving that room for an hour until I've played this thing perfectly right. I'm still looking for finding the best notes with the best pitch I can find, with the best note location to make sure I can go from this note to this note. And I insist on my students understand what I call honest practice is. And that's when you are determined to get it right and don't accept almost as an option. Almost doesn't count except in hand grenades and love. Let's see. What was it like playing with Tribe Called Quest and Erykah Badu from Saunders? I saw Q-Tip last night, as a matter of fact. There was a reading last night of a proposed movie on the history of Miles Davis, and they had a reading of 10 people reading a script. So I had the chance to see Mr. Q-Tip last night, and I hadn't seen him for a while, with a wonderful greeting. I had not decided to record with Tribe Called Quest because I didn't know who they were and I didn't know their music, so I called my sons, who are much more into that level, that kind of music, that style. They told me they thought that this band, Tribe Called Quest, was a group that seemed to be the most musically interesting to them. That changes, they knew some melodies. And I said, okay, so I got back to Mr. Q-Tip and I told him I was available with the understanding that the lyrics would be okay for people in my age category. My car would be parked outside, the motor still running, and had my bass case and my hat nearby. And we enjoyed the humor. That's pretty serious. So he called me up again. We agreed on the situation, the money, and the time, and I went to the studio about 5 o'clock in the evening. I had him read the script, his poem, their rap for the tune. I said, well, can you read it again so I can hear your phrasing? And while they were doing that, I was kind of getting in tune with the bass and getting the engineer, getting the sound that I thought was okay. And 2 hours later, I was going home. I had done a pretty good job, and they were very happy with it. Good experience. I miss those guys. I'd like to do more with them if they ever had time to reform the band with some kind of serious intent. Danielle, what is my favorite track with Tony Williams? As it turns out, my favorite track with Tony would be his last appearance in New York. I'm sorry he's not here, of course. I'd like to think he left the concert. And he was planning on doing a trio gig in California with myself and Mongo Miller. And I missed not being able to show him how much better I've gotten playing the bass. So all my memories of him are tinged with, man, if I could get at you, if I could get next to you now, if I could stand right there by the hi-hat and hear what I learned in the meantime. My chance will come. Okay, Mr. Davidson, hope that's okay. Kansas, did I ever play with G.G. Grice? No, I arrived in New York in 1959, and G.G. Grice was leaving for California. Actually, he was leaving because he was having difficulty with the publishing business in New York. And he ultimately stopped playing in New York and moved down to Florida, where he turned out to be a teacher, a high school teacher. Randy Weston was a dear friend of his, so he shared with me some D.G. Grice stories. And I still play D.G. Grice's song Minority. It's a great tune, and I love it. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to say hello, Mr. Grice. Let's see. I have time for like 3 more questions, and we'll see if I can answer real fast. By the way, this record is the song in the background called Loose Change. Alec, there's some stories about my time playing with Miles Davis, but we're kind of short on time, so if you'll call back for the next time, we'll find a way to get as many of those answers of your questions about Miles and me. Is that right? Miles and I. Okay, me and Miles. I'm going to be first. Me and Miles. Okay. Yeah, I miss people like D.G. Grice. Are there any exercises, Sean? Are there any exercises that I recommend for a bass to improve their time feel? Let's see how to answer that question in 25 words or less. Start the count. 1, 2, 3. One of the reasons bass players don't have great time, Sean, is that they don't know the changes and they don't know the form of the tune. So I recommend all those bass players who think they have a problem playing time, or their friends who think they have trouble playing time, is to have this guy sit down and, for example, write the changes to a tune and see what the form of the tune is. See if he can organize his note choice to make this form stay in place. Can he organize his bass line so that everyone knows here comes the bridge, or here comes the last 8 back to the top? One of the problems with having poor time is not being able to make the choices in time. And part of that problem is not knowing the information clearly enough. That's a 10-minute job. Get back to me now and let me know how that works out. I got time for one more question. Let's see. Where do I buy my ties and my shirts? My ties are from all over the place. My wife makes some. I buy them from a place called Paul Stewart down in Manhattan. Nice choice. I just came back from London and bought some great ties on Seville Row. Not Fish Eggs Row. Nice place. So we're going to end this topic now in this brief conversational piece by telling a joke. This is for all bass players. It starts with a son who wants to play bass, and he's convinced his father finally to let him play bass. So his father says, okay, but you got to practice. So his father buys him the bass, and he goes to school for the first day. He comes back 10 minutes, half hour later, and his father says, wow, that was a short lesson. What did you learn today? And the son says, I learned today to take the bass out of the case. The father says, well, okay. A week goes by, the son goes to school for another lesson. He comes back 1 hour later, and his father says, boy, you're getting more experience. What did you learn today? The son says, I learned the name of the open strings, G, D, A, and I think E, but I'm not really sure. His father's getting real pleased. His son's taking care of business, he's taking the lessons, he's serious about the instrument. He goes to school next week for a lesson and comes back 2 days late. And his father's upset. He says, where were you? He said, I had a gig. See ya. Okay.